maybe, so it's interesting, right? And maybe we take two steps back and sort of explain what that concept is of looking at those events that have happened in your past from the vibrational level you were at when it occurred, and then the vibrational level you're at right now. So that higher vibrational level, that higher perspective, is that 360 view, gives you a much better view of what was going on, right?
Yeah, yeah, because you and I have talked about various business deals and business events that happen, and we have some similar experiences. But like when I exited from the business where I was a 40% shareholder, it was quite a substantial business. We had like 45 staff and so on. And um, the stake was worth quite a lot of money. And then the guy who'd been my business partner suddenly tried to trigger various things legally and to get my stake for nothing. And that didn't happen because I managed to negotiate quite well and bluffed him a bit. But then he tried another tactic, and he hadn't actually read the company documentation properly and was badly advised by his lawyer. And he kind of snookered himself and ended up paying an extra $1 million because of that thing that happened. But the entire time, I wasn't just in fear, I was in terror. It was so scary because the way the deal worked, it would either give me a whole lot of money or wipe me out, the way the whole thing was going. And it was absolutely terrifying. And I detested him for a long time for basically, this thing I've read about, I read it in spiritual texts about the mountain lion. The mountain lion, if they find you, they're going to attack you and eat you, because that's what mountain lions do. You can't blame them for being a mountain lion. All that parable about the scorpion and the frog, where the scorpion asks the frog for a ride across the river, and the frog says no, because you'll sting me and we'll drown. And then the scorpion says, well, why would I do that? Because we don't want to drown. I don't want to drown. And halfway across, the scorpion stings the frog. And as they're going down, the frog says, well, why did you do that? And the scorpion says, well, I'm a scorpion. It's in my nature. That's what I do. Anyway, so this guy was like the scorpion or the mountain lion, and I didn't realize that I'd attracted that whole experience to me. And I blamed him for being, this, that, and the other, kind of a nasty person. And I look back now and I realize that it has so many pieces of information or lessons, if you like, for me, including my ability to manifest a lot of money instantly, and also to feel unworthy of it and what the consequences of that became, and the baggage I carried. Even though on the surface I was great, I didn't have to work anymore, I had money, I had 2 houses, I had a great lifestyle, I was traveling, blah, blah, blah. And but what I was feeling on the inside was the opposite, and that's eventually what persisted.
Yeah, that that to me is I had a very similar situation too, but it is amazing that I had a business partner for 15 years that ended up doing the same thing for me, and I owned 33% of the company, not 40, but he took it from me. Well, I shouldn't say he took it from me. He used the legal strategies to maneuver himself in and myself out. I was very angry. I identified with that company. That company was me, and when I was no longer a part of it, I lost my own identity. Terra I was ashamed at the fear I felt, ashamed at how scared I was, with a family, a huge monthly nut, no income, and all of my life savings invested in that company. So yeah, that to me is a debilitating. I felt paralyzed. I could not move, could not make a decision, and I was completely ashamed. I felt like such a loser. How could this happen to me? Then there were lawsuits, and I was still trying to defend myself. I didn't have any money to defend myself, but yet you had to get lawyers anyway. So yeah, I know that feeling. I think, and I asked this myself the same question as a son of 2 school teachers. How did I get myself into this situation, and how did I attract this? But that was a huge question I asked for a number of years. And then I finally we talked a lot about it today, and then I finally forgave him. Maybe forgave is maybe what we use the word or the definition of forgive really is just more of an acknowledgement that this was of service, right? That I learned a whole lot, and there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not answering a business question that I haven't learned something from those years in that situation. I just today, I was on a call with somebody and they asked, and I was like, oh, and I see 5 steps down. I'm like, okay. And I was just shook my head, and like, I see clearly now. And I'm not here to be negative or even try to control the situation. It's just being aware and how to protect yourself. And maybe protect is even the wrong word. How to prepare yourself to ensure you can achieve your happiest moments, right? For that. But yeah, I feel everything you said. I feel wholeheartedly, like in my soul. It's debilitating because I openly and blindly trust, and when it's not returned, it's paralyzing.
Yeah. A turning point for me was when in the Joshua material, when they talk about us all being eternally connected, and every relationship is an eternal one. And there's an expression that popped up recently that Joshua talked about everybody you know as being your soul family. So I realized that with this guy, my ex-business partner, that he and I were eternally connected. And although I thought he was an asshole and all the rest of it, I realized at a higher level, we were eternally connected, and there were some very good elements in the relationship. And I also am able to recognize the areas in which he was a very capable businessman. He had a fatal flaw, which I think fundamentally was unworthiness. And he took some shortcuts and persuaded the board that they were okay, but I knew they weren't. And that's why I wanted to get out. And that was 2004, end of 2004. And then it took a while. It's what we call the GFC, the global financial crisis. You guys call it something different, but the big meltdown that happened a few years later with the mortgage, markets and all of that stuff. And that brought that company to its knees, and he walked away with a large sum of money. He sold it to a public company. And then I could have stuck around and made a lot more money, but I would have lost my reputation. And essentially those guys who were in there still, they lost money for people, and then they basically have had to become invisible. Like, you can't find them on social media or anything. So I escaped with my integrity and a smaller amount of money than he got. But I mean, he died of cancer a few years later. But I realized that if we're eternally connected and he's a really talented businessman, then in that sense where Joshua says, when somebody dies, you never lose them, really, I am now able to get to the point where occasionally, just occasionally, I let him in to give me some advice, where thoughts come from. So I feel he's there, and we're like in another realm. We're both laughing at what we did down here in the physical. And I recognize that because he was so capable in so many ways, and he was capable in areas where I wasn't, and vice versa. So I realized that he's quite a complementary character to me. I just want to tell you one other thing that happened with that realization of eternal connection, especially to important people, because I had a lot of issues with my mother, who's a wonderful person, and everybody loves her, but I felt her love was very conditional, and I felt that I was kind of superfluous and outside the family, and I became a rebel, and I had this real, I suppose, chip on my shoulder about it. And then one day with the stuff with Joshua, and they said you're eternally connected. So the first thought that came to me is, we're eternally connected. One day in the non-physical, we'll reunite and we'll laugh at how we carried on. And I thought to myself, well, if this current edition of her here now in the physical is misbehaving, that's my first thought, then I now realize that we can laugh at that as if it was the two of us on stage doing a routine, an acting routine, where we were being nasty to each other on stage, and then we walk off stage and, hey, man, you were so good in that play. You were awesome. And you embraced them, and it was wonderful. But then I thought, well, actually, she's not even misbehaving. She's actually reflecting back what I am offering, because I've got these victim thoughts of feeling unloved and all the rest of it. So once I clicked that switch where I thought, okay, this is just a kind of a charade that we're playing, and the real connection is deep and permanent and eternal. The moment I did that, her entire attitude to me changed. I wouldn't have believed it if I had not witnessed it. And I talked to my partner, Trace, and she's like, that was amazing. It was like you clicked a switch, and suddenly my mother's attitude to me was completely different, 180 degrees. And next thing you know, she's asking me to take various legal roles in her estate planning and all this kind of stuff, which, hadn't happened before. But then I heard something else that Joshua said the other day, which was if you are feeling unloved and you're projecting that out, you're going to attract unloved. Whereas if you actually offer love, you will get that back in return. So I realized that I had unknowingly triggered that love mechanism.
That's amazing. And it, the reflection back is it's such a big concept. And, there, even today, this morning, I woke up and since I haven't really been feeling great, there were a few things I need to get done, and I hadn't gotten done. And immediately fear creeps in, and you start to, question yourself and doubt yourself. And you have to make yourself aware of it. And you have to, and I had to like sit down, take a deep breath. And because it's so easy to go down that road of anger, of blame, of victimhood in a matter of without anything ever happening, without anything even coming close to bringing you down that road. Your mind takes you down that road, and you're putting out all of this energy that is completely unproductive. And it happens in a blink of an eye. You don't even realize it. Even what Jessica said today, that most of us are living in fear or out of alignment, right? She said most of our time we only step into alignment a few minutes a day, right? So for us, what does that actually mean? Like, we all, if we can agree that the alignment is living life through joy and love, right? If that is a basic concept, right? And obviously we can play with it a little bit, right? But if that's how much joy and love do you feel all day? And there are sometimes I just feel nothing. I just,
Yeah.
Is that out of alignment? Does that mean it's negative or do you have to feel elated?
Well, the simple definition of alignment is that you see things from the same point of view as your inner self, which doesn't tell you how you know whether you're in alignment or not. The way you know is by how you feel. So if you're feeling positive emotions, then you are in alignment and seeing things the same way as your inner self. But if you're feeling negative emotions, then the two of you are seeing things differently. And to get back in alignment, you have to recast your point of view, your perspective on things, really. Yeah, but I agree with you that time pressure and all these little things each day, it's easy to wake up and get going and start from a bad point of view, really, that negative point of view. And there's a whole thing around tasks that I feel I have to do, and also around time lack. And I heard Joshua say one day, because I was kind of thinking about always feeling not enough time, and then I heard Joshua say one day, lack is lack, whether it's money, whether it's time, love, health, relationships, whatever. Lack is lack, and it doesn't matter what it is. And I thought, well, that's a good perspective. So I started imagining that I did have enough time. And the other thing I wanted to try and do was work that I feel I have to do for my business that I don't really want to do. I found I just wasn't able to make myself do it. And I slowly got to this idea, what if I recast my perspective on it and try to do it from a point of view of love and appreciation and wanting to just do the right things. Like the clients we deal with now, we've managed to attract clients we really, really like all the pain in the butt ones are gone. And, they're just wonderful people, and they appreciate us. We really love them, and it's very cool. So I'm working to get, and that's starting to work for me. And while we're here today, is one other thing I want to talk about, maybe a little bit later, is for a long time I struggled with, if I want more money and a better house and all that stuff, that's a desire, but I never felt that I had that whole thing around financial abundance quite right. So I got some thoughts about that because I finally progressed my thinking. Anyway, you were saying about this morning.
Well, I think you're right on. I mean, you're almost finishing my sentences. It's kind of uncanny. but like there are things I just don't want to do. It's you know how it is. You're starting up, a company. You got some. There's just tasks that are like I've done it so many. I'm like, oh, I got to do this again, and it's brutal, and it's hours, right? And I'm like I'm just doing everything I can to avoid it, right?
Yeah.
Find ways to do everything else but that. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, if I don't want to do it, and I don't feel it's such a forced effort. It's such a forced effort, and then that sort of conflicts, right, with some of the teachings that we've gone through. Like if it's forced, you're doing it. If you're forcing anything, it's wrong. And I sort of think back, well, I mean, it's got to get done. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not like
Mhm.
well,
Yeah.
maybe it does just show up and done one day. I don't know.
Well, another thing I've noticed is that I wake up today and it's like, I really don't want to do that task. I wake up tomorrow, I really don't want to do that task or find anything else to do. And then the next day I wake up, it's like, oh, I'm going to get up and just nail that task right now. So that's another strategy I found, is that some days I just have the energy for it. And I, within reason, because there are deadlines in business, I find that if I often become a match to it. At some point, it just kind of happens. And that, along with the other idea I mentioned of trying to recast these things to do it from a sense of love and purpose, I found that that has really helped. I had a very similar discussion with Mark, he's been doing boot camp and Ascension Experience, because he said he finds that he gets to the end of the day sometimes, and all the things he had on his list to do, he hasn't done most of them, and he feels really bad. And I kind of had a bit of an answer for him. And then every time I found another piece, I would WhatsApp him and send him my next piece. And so now we've managed, between the two of us, we kind of put some more pieces in that jigsaw.
That's I find myself, if my Monday, my to-do list, and all of a sudden it's Thursday afternoon and I finally decide to do it, but it was on there since Monday. And I think, I feel guilty for not getting it done too. It's like, uh, as I try to, look at it from a higher perspective and just say, hey, this is what it is. Everything that happens right and in perfect timing. That to me is a very powerful statement. It's also, um, it's like a seesaw for me. Like, if I don't really feel like doing it and I'm forcing it, but it's got to get done. And well, should I just let it happen, or should I put more time into it? If I feel just blah, if I feel like, ugh, am I inspired to do it? These are all, when you start thinking about the higher perspective, and everything needs to come from inspired action. Everything needs to become from inspired here, inspired there. Should I just stop doing everything that I'm not inspired to do?
Yeah, so I had all those thoughts as well. And I don't, my personal view is I don't think that is the answer. The guilty thing, by the way, I've had that as well. And I've tried to rephrase that, because that really is not helpful. That's falling out of alignment to feel guilty. It's like, I'm bad, I am wrong. It's like, no, it's all perfect and I will get to it. And anyway, yeah, it is a conundrum, but I feel like I'm getting to the end of this, and the way forth you've just described, I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, I mean, these are just all sort of, thoughts that, as we discussed today in the class. It's interesting to me. I constantly just sit back and listen and try to absorb as much as possible, and then see how my day's unfolding. Being grateful and appreciative and happy, and seeing everything for the benefit of it. I'm able to look at the past and understand the benefit of it. I don't think I hold a grudge anymore. I don't, that's a huge win,
Yep,
right?
that is huge.
Um,
That is really big. Yep.
right. And I did hold, grudges. You get angry, right? You want to retaliate, whatever that means, right? You want to get back at people. I no longer feel any of those things, and I wish everybody happy, health, and best. Um, There is that interesting, and we did talk a little bit today about forgiveness, and there are things that I've done in business that, as I look back now, not that I wasn't proud of at the time. I look back now, and I felt very guilty and very bad for it for a long time. Now I look at it as a learning lesson for myself, as, hey, this is just not how you want to be. The idea of forgiveness, or of forgiving myself for criticizing and holding myself accountable to such a degree that it became a huge weight on my shoulders. I don't know how the other person felt. I've never reached out to the other person or the other people. It's not like there's a long list, but there are things that occur, as you know, in business, that sometimes you're proud, sometimes you're not proud. As you look back, I would probably never do it again. But they were good lessons. I mean, maybe, and if I can't project in someone else's reality, maybe I was just playing a role for them.
Yeah, there is that thing as well. You talk about things from the past, and I've heard Joshua talk about a couple of things about the past that really resonated with me. One was the idea that you have to accept everything in the past and the present and the future, because not accepting something in the future is really just fear and worry, imaginary scenarios. But they talk about what I now realize to be a fact, that our memory of the past is very, very poor and limited. We almost remember nothing of what actually unfolded. And I thought there is some truth in that. But then I noticed them talking to people about things in the past, how much people have forgotten, how little they remember, or how they misremember it. So, like, our memories of the past are somewhat fictional and very limited, and really to be taken with a grain of salt, I think. And then you think, well, it is in the past. It can't affect me unless I let it. And so I can actually recast the path in any way I want, the past in any way I want, that I can actually retell that story. I guess I first heard that from when I was doing some counseling once after my first marriage broke up. I decided to go and get counseling because I thought, right, I want to set my life on track for the life I do want now. And I was telling a story of various things that happened. And looking back now, I guess I was casting myself as a villain or a victim. And the counselor said, well, why don't you retell that story with you as the hero? And I thought, what? And that was a step too far. But now I understand that reframing suggestion was absolutely a brilliant intervention.
I love that. It's to me, it's unbelievable, right? It's so interesting as you become aware of all these different elements, applying them in your life, being aware of them, consciously aware, and being able to consider them, and then applying them they're three different steps.
Well, that's true. We get the intellectual apprehension of the thing first, don't we? We understand it intellectually. And Jessica talked a lot about that today and the other day as well, that to actually live it and know it at a deep level, it takes time. I mean, I've been doing boot camps for 2 years, and I actually feel that I'm really, really, really getting somewhere now. And I'm having these days where I wake up and I just feel this immense energy coming to me and through me. And, it's just kind of an extreme joy of life, and just this kind of ecstatic fun feeling, really, which is, I lost that years ago. I lost my ability to enjoy life, and it's coming back now because of this work I'm doing.
Me too. I've talked to countless people my age, and they all say the same thing. We've gotten down to the point where we're, paying bills and putting kids through school, and you're looking forward to your evening martini and show, and you fall asleep, right? And that's just not life. But that's the life that society has pushed us into, and it's not life, and it's not joy, and it's not fun, and it's not adventurous on any level.
It's interesting you say that, and it's interesting you say that you've spoken to a lot of people your age who have the same feeling or experience, because to some extent, it does seem that there is an age trajectory that occurs, that it's the build-up of resistance and things you don't want to do, and fears, and the kind of natural, spontaneous joy of life that I had as a kid and a teenager. Once I got to some point in my 20s, I suppose it started to diminish, and then when I got to my 40s and 50s, especially 50s, it started to shrink some more. And I think I used to say you become more of who you really are. But what I meant, I guess, when I understand is that if you don't address your fears and your limiting beliefs, and your negative emotions, then you actually do spiral into more and more of that as you go.
Well, I think this whole concept of a midlife crisis, right, that's been around
Oh, yeah.
forever, isn't
Yeah.
really a
Yeah.
midlife crisis. It's just people starting to become aware that they've made, you're handheld all the way through college. You're asked, are you happy? Are you getting, is this a good place for you? Are you making friends? Are you learning? Right? All these great conversations, and they're hugging you, and you get to talk to your teacher if you don't get a grade you like, and then you graduate and you get a job. And I remember my first job out of college was at an advertising agency in 1990 in New York City. It was $17,000 a year. That was my salary, 17 US, right? And I remember my parents going, "You can't take that job. You got to hold out for 20." I'm like, "That's like $50 more a paycheck." I'm like, what are you but that was the mentality. That was what you were being taught. It wasn't like, I was never asked, "Are you happy there? Are the people good to you? Is your boss nice?" I don't think
Yeah.
anybody ever asked me those questions in my 35 years of work, right? It's insane to me when you think about, and you wonder why it takes, between, whatever, 22 and let's say 45, right? Those 23 years, all of a sudden you have a breakdown. You're like, I'm unhappy, because everything goes out, and all it is about, I think you spend all this time waiting to get true, not adult accountability and responsibilities. Then you gobble them up in a way that they overwhelm you, and that becomes your only focus. Responsibility, pay the bill, make money. And then you hit a brick wall, and you're like, this is not what life's about. And people call it a midlife crisis when it's just
Yeah.
becoming more consciously aware.
Yeah. It's kind of, that's a very useful insight, I think. I've been thinking about it in terms of people pursuing a corporate life and eventually becoming unenthusiastic about it or burned out about it, because in the way that you just described, I was picturing the carrot on the stick, and you're always thinking, right, I'm doing this because of some future reason. I'm doing it because when I get to this point, things are going to be really good. But of course, that never happens, because if you're not finding joy in the moment, you're not going to find it in the future either. And in fact, it's probably going to get worse. And you eventually get to the carrot and think, shit, this carrot, it's rotten. I didn't want it, and it was pointless. Or you realize that the carrot is always just, like King Tantalus in the river. You just never reach the damn thing.
Yeah. It's so my wife and I have had many conversations. We both worked, from middle school all the way up through high school, through college. We worked to pay our ways whenever we could. And our both of our daughters currently, they go to school, they get great grades, they're in honors, they play sports, but they don't work. And we joke all the time, we want to come back as our kids, because we pretty much give them the red carpet. And I said, but they're good kids. They're not, we make sure they're not spoiled. They're very appreciative. My daughter's talked to Joshua a few times, and
Wow.
we've gone through this. And it's interesting. I've said to my wife, and we've had really, I think, really good discussions about, hey, I want her to be happy. And I say to her, and we have this discussion, my wife's super hardworking, a lot more successful than I am. She's awesome on every possible level. And I say to, there's enough, after my daughter graduates college at 21, there's another 65 years for her to be miserable if that's her choice. But
Yeah.
let's set her up for happiness and success. I remember, as a kid, 8th grade on, I mean, every free minute I worked, every free minute I had,
Yeah.
I was trying to put money in the bank to pay for college, to do those kind of things. And I don't know if it's right or wrong. I'm not here to judge anybody, but I do know my oldest daughter, there's something about her, and we're always, hey, is this right? And we do a lot of co-parenting and conversations and trying to understand that we're doing the right thing. But I've really come since, right before Joshua, and, probably just over the last 3 or 4 years, just slowly really bought into this. Why would I make her miserable? Was cleaning toilet bowls in 10th grade, did that really make a difference in my life? I look back now, I'm like, that was, I don't even have one fun story or one anecdote. I'm like, that was just disgusting. Like, I just like, or maybe I know what I didn't want to do. Right. I don't know. I know it was a gift that I'm now using and saying, and I say to my kids all the time, well, if you want, and you don't get, they do get an allowance and get some money, but I'm like, if you want, you got to earn money if you want to do other things, right? You got to earn it. But it is interesting in how we grew up, and I'm sure you were a similar age, similar to me, where it was work, 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 work,
Yeah,
make.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so just a tiny anecdote. When I was in my first year of university, when I was 18, I got a cleaning job. And the first cleaning job I got was the bottom rung of the ladder. It was a 21 level office tower, and I cleaned the toilets. So I'd get the elevator to the top and do 21 men's toilets, elevator to the top, 21 women's toilets, like at 9 o'clock at night. So I know about cleaning the can. And
Yeah, we've been there. Okay, I like it. We have a lot more in common than we know.
yeah. But what I want to say is, in something that Joshua, I had this feeling that kids arriving now don't have to do the hard yards that we did, and they don't seem to. And Joshua basically says the brand new ones come in at a higher vibration than we are. And I kind of always knew that, but I didn't have the language or the concept around it. And so, and you can see it because I find that young people, and even in their teens, but certainly in 20s and 30s, they have so much more wisdom than I ever had at that age. And I find that people, even in their 20s and sometimes in their teens, can actually give me a lot of thoughts and ideas. In other words, the fact that I'm meant to be older and wiser and more experienced and know more, and some of that, I do know more quite often because I've been around longer, but I realized that forget all of that and just, and young people don't have the respect for older people just because they're old anymore. And that's right. Like, unless you're deserving of respect, then just because you're old is no good reason for it. There's a friend of ours who, he had a vineyard on this beautiful island in New Zealand called Waiheke Island. It's just out of Auckland, which is the biggest city. It's like a 35-minute ferry ride. Beautiful vineyard, and he was selling the grapes to a bigger vineyard, and that was great. He had these Chardonnay grapes. And then one day somebody took over the vineyard and said, I don't want your wine anymore, your juice. And so he's like, what do I do? So he thought, okay, somebody in their family was a winemaker. So, right, we'll make our own wine. Anyway, that's kind of all by the by. He came up with this name for this vineyard, and it was from mythology. I'm going to say Greek mythology. And it's basically standing on the shoulders of giants. And I thought that is the analogy that I like. It's like, kids should come into the world standing on our shoulders, don't have to go and clean toilets like we did. We want them to come in with everything that we've got and an even higher vibration, and then go to the next level. And Joshua tells us that that is actually what is happening. And so some parents who think the kids have to work and do the hard yards like we did, well, that's a perspective, but it's not actually the way the world is shaping up. Because in my opinion, young people are coming in at a far higher level of vibration than we were at that age. And, I guess that's the whole thing about the time of awakening, or the progression of the mass consciousness, whatever you want to call it.
It's, I think if it wasn't for social media, they would be at a 10x speed. I think social media drags them back down to lower vibrations, right? And judgment and criticism and discussions that don't, pertain to anything. But it is interesting to watch them, two teenagers, go through that smoke. There's a process, right, where you react to social media. Social media takes over your life, and now I'm at a point where my oldest daughter leaves her phone home. She's only 18. You would think that so there's a interesting progression that if you choose, my youngest daughter, the phone's never out of her hand. Never, ever, ever, ever. At dinner or whatever, we've tried. And my wife and I have said, honey, I'm not willing to fight with you. We would ruin dinner. We would scream, put the phone down, right? And she would pick it back. I'm like, just let it all happen. Just let it all happen. We ask nicely once, please put it down so we can have a conversation. She picks it back up. She picks it back up. And then you got my older daughter who went to that same, now she's going off to college, university, and leaves her phone at home all the time. Does everything off. So it's interesting to see that progression. And I find myself leaving my phone at home. I've never used to do that.
How old is your younger daughter?
She's a ninth grader, so 15, freshman. She's
Yeah,
freshman in high school.
because I remember around those ages, 13, 14, 15, whatever, um, you suddenly discover a world on the cusp of adulthood, but it's not the world of childhood. And suddenly friendships and relationships and boys or girls or whatever, it's like it's one of the most exciting and vital times of your life. And we did it by phone or hanging out or whatever, by talking on the telephone, and I guess they're just having that. It is such an incredibly intense time, because they say that a lot of people, the music they like the best is the music that they fell in love to. So it's when they first fell in love, that incredible, intense experience, emotional peak, whatever that music was, kind of gets imprinted. And for a lot of people, that's the best music in the world. That's the best era. Like whatever that is, people will tell you the best music is the 70s or the 80s or the 90s or the next decade or whatever. It's like, all of which is rubbish, of course, because music has been wonderful and perfect since time immemorial. And I try and listen to everything from, Beethoven and opera right through to rap. And we're actually going to a thrash metal concert on Saturday. And we went to a
Wow.
jazz concert last weekend. And this thrash metal band, they're actually appearing with the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, which is pretty weird. And they do real thrash metal, like screaming. Well, they also sing
Wow.
in English and in our indigenous language, Maori, Te Reo Maori, the Maori language. So they're real groundbreakers. Funnily enough, I didn't know about them, but a woman who introduced me to Abraham and Joshua, who lives in Toronto, she's an author and does LOA stuff, and her husband's a musician. I was talking to her about her latest book, and called Bollywood PI, which is pretty hilarious. And she said something about, I love alien weaponry. And I said, what's that? And she sent me this video. I was like, oh, you know more about our local music scene here in New Zealand than I do. So next thing I saw, they're coming to our town. So we're going to see them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't do thrash metal. I find myself, I mean, we're similar in age, just a few years. But my head, I don't do well with like loud, like I used to be able to multitask 100 different things and have music blasting and people screaming. I worked in New York City, and now I find myself in complete confusion when it gets too loud. I can't focus. So it's interesting, and I don't know if it's because I'm starting to understand and pay attention to what I'm feeling versus negate and override, which I did for so long. And the louder New York City got, the more control I exerted, the more effort I put in, right? And now, as I'm trying to let certain things happen, the peace and the quiet help me.
Yeah, I appreciate peace and quiet more than I ever did. One of probably my favorite toy is my stereo, most of which actually was made in New York. It's a famous brand anyway, and it can be very, very, very loud if I want it to be, but it also, at low volume levels, it sounds amazing. But I noticed that I do really appreciate silence. And at times when I might have played music, sometimes I think, oh, I'm just gonna have silence today. I still use the stereo, and we live rurally, so we can play it loud, and
Right.
nightclub loud when it's loud, which I still enjoy, but I don't do it all that often. But yeah, I do appreciate silence much more than I ever did. I want to talk about this abundance piece a little bit. About 2 years ago, when I was first starting boot camp, and we were talking about abundance one day, and we had quite a discussion about it, maybe on a coaching call. And then Tracy said, yeah, but I still want the $1 million. And I thought, yeah, I get that totally. And I've never quite managed to reconcile the whole thing of having a desire for more money. And most people in boot camp, in the Ascension experience, are interested in financial abundance, and it is the most abundance is the most popular and downloaded of the meditations that Gary has given us, and it is the main reason why people sign up for the boot camp, is they want more abundance. So it is a preoccupation for most people in this community, probably most people in the world, I guess. But what I realized was that if I keep thinking about the financial thing that I want, then I'm actually still exploring the lack of it. So my focus becomes, I don't have this thing and I want it. And then I realize, oh, that's how you get stuck in lack and exploring lack and more and more and more of that. And the way out of that, I eventually discovered, is it kind of feels a little bit like jumping out of a plane without a parachute. And I think I emailed you about that the other day, actually. But it's like you get in alignment, you act on inspiration, you do all that stuff, knowing that the universe will provide whatever it is you need. I mean, if I look at it, I've always been fine. So why should I worry? I've always had plenty of everything. So what's there to worry about? And then you attract the abundance that you need. You have the abundance that you deserve based on your vibration and what you're giving out. So I realized that thinking about that thing I want, it's very well to have a desire, but it's very easy for that desire to actually be a further exploration of lack. And I think that's the trap that many of us must end up in. And also, we can't imagine where the money might come from. Like, I never saw that deal coming when I cashed out of the business in 2004. But, you might think, oh, well, I need to win the lottery or something needs to happen, in order for me to get a whole lot of money. But I realized that that is actually victim thinking, because if I think the only way I can get a whole lot of money is to win the lottery or something, then that's basically saying I don't think I can be a conscious or deliberate creator. I don't think I can manifest what I want. And I don't really trust the universe to provide after all. So I realized, forget about the lottery and all these other, quick fire means of making money. They may or may not happen, but really it's about if you can actually trust in the process and act on inspiration. So I started to do that, and it is actually starting to work. And I do believe it will continue to snowball. Like, I'm just finding I'm attracting money far more than ever before right now.
So help me with that a little bit.
Yes.
Help me with that a little bit. That's really interesting. So I think one of the things I sent you was all about money as well for me. And I don't find it debilitating. I don't find it lacking, but I do enjoy dreaming about these wild, luxurious abundance, financial abundance and freedom and all the fun things we would do, right, with that. And enjoying those moments.
So that is the key. That is actually the key. So another part to it that Joshua started talking about recently was, you want that thing because of how it's going to make you feel, or how you think it's going to make you feel. But there's nothing to stop you cultivating that feeling now. Like, how would I feel if I had the house I really wanted, or the amount of money I really wanted? So instead of thinking about the house or the money, just cultivate that feeling. And so the feeling as if I had the dream house, as if I had those millions of dollars that I wanted. And so that's another thing I've been really working on, is because when you have a big payday in business, you feel really good. And it's like, okay, that does feel good. Now, how do I actually have that feeling regardless of my circumstances? And initially it seems pretty hard because there's so much resistance and so many limiting beliefs, but those feelings really are the key, I think. So notice and cultivate more of those feelings. Not I want that thing, but man, I feel so good because.
Yeah, and that is right. So like, we talked a little bit. I like crypto. I think you like crypto a little bit, right? We dabble. It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up buying some of this crypto, which I enjoyed, XRP, right? And I liked it because of it wasn't a DeFi, and I liked it as the platform and technology to do cross-border transfers. I thought it was really smart, and I thought it was owned by insiders. Obviously, most of the crypto, Bitcoin is all about outsiders, right? Peer-to-peer and so forth. This was just the opposite, but that's kind of why I liked it, because I don't think any government's going to allow the peer-to-peer people to take over on anywhere. There's still value in there. But I ended up buying this and sort of backed up the truck, and I had some fun with it. And I literally giggle about, I'm like, if this thing hits $10, if it hits $100, I find myself giggling, like laughing. I'm like, oh, we're moving. We're going to live in Capri for the next 10 years, right? And we're just going to fly people in and out. We're just going to have fun, right? With it. And I I enjoy that. Like I'm like, wow, this really makes me, and if it happens, doesn't happen. It's not, there's nothing hinged on it. I'm not attached to that outcome, but I do find myself, and I'd love your thoughts on this, taking, and so it's funny. I woke up at like 4 a.m. It was like 4:44. It was one of those.
Wow. Okay.
And it was like,
Yep.
go buy XRP and go back up the truck, go buy 50,000 coins now, like right now. And you can't, I mean, on the different, you can't, this was before the SEC lawsuit had happened with it. This was in December. And it was like whatever, 18 cents, right? It wasn't like it was a big number, right? It was like 7 cents, I think, or whatever it was. So it wasn't like you were spending a boatload of money, right? But it was like, it's going to be, and every day I would sit there and I would say, buy more, buy more, buy more, buy more. And there are limits on these sites. You can't go in, which is great, right? Because people don't get in trouble.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the more you buy, the more the limit goes up. Yeah.
But you can't go do it at once, right? So you can't get in trouble. And you got to wait like a week, right?
Yep.
So it literally took me like 10 weeks to do this.
Right.
And I kept saying, like, I would be in the middle of work doing something. It's like, go buy more. I'm like, okay. And I would just go on the site and like, again, you 2,500 shares at 20 cents, right? Is you spending $800. It's not like you're out there, putting your mortgage and your kids, college funds away.
Yeah.
But it was super interesting to me. And I constantly, even to this day, even right now, I think about it, I just start giggling. I'm like, I don't know what it is, but that was one of the inspired things. But I not that I have an attachment to the outcome. I feel like maybe this is, you don't trust. I feel like there's some sort of inspired action towards your happiness, right? And maybe just sitting back and doing nothing and trusting is absolutely one thing. But is that a contradiction? Are they contradicting each other?
Where do you see the contradiction?
Like, instead of just going, well, if the universe if everything's always working out for me and the universe is giving me everything, why do I have to do anything?
Yeah. So I have had people talk about that concept a little bit. Josh has been saying lately that you have your inner self, and you have your inspirations, and you have the physical body to actually implement those, and you need to push past fear and take the actions you're inspired to take. So it is necessary to take action, and it is necessary to push past fear. The trick is not to act on urges out of fear, but to act from an inspired place, or to reframe what you're doing so that you understand it as an act of love rather than of fear. So waking up at 4:44, Joshua talks about that a bit, and a lot of people in the community do, those alignment numbers. So that happens all the time now, that I look at my clock or my whatever, the thing on my desk that's got the temperature as well, and the numbers all line up. It's like, what are the odds? And so that happens a lot now. And statistically, those moments are few and far between. So it seems to be happening more than randomly. Another thing Joshua said about what you mentioned is that your inner self often wakes you up at 4 a.m. or whatever to get your attention, to receive inspiration, to get some ideas, to process some whatever. And then, right, okay, we've had your attention, we'll let you go back to sleep now. So, those two things, I'm very aware of the power of those. Yeah, and one day, because as you know, a friend of ours has done pretty well with crypto, and he'd often talked about it, and I was like, whatever, because I have a financial markets background, so I was skeptical initially. But one day I thought, right, I'm going to find an app. And so I looked around and found this app called Binance, which turns out to be one of the 2 main apps in the world, but I didn't know that. I just found it in the Apple store. And I thought, what do I buy? I'll buy Bitcoin, and this looks interesting, Ethereum, I'll buy that. And then it turns out, when I spoke to our friend, he's like, buy Bitcoin and Ether. It's like, yes, I did already. And I thought, I'm going to buy it because I know nothing about it. But once I buy it, I'll start learning. And then I haven't bought a lot, like, as you say, you don't want to necessarily, risk everything. But I am learning. And there are many things about it that interest me. And one of the things I heard some guys talking about this, I've been watching some videos, YouTube videos from people in this market. And, some of them, like one of these guys, he's been like an aeronautical engineer and all sorts of things. And, he's been to the top universities, MIT or something. Anyway, these guys are smart guys. And one of them's the head of a pretty major listed company. And Um, with all the governments printing money at the moment, I think what these guys are getting at is printing money actually is devaluing the currency. And so everyone thinks like asset prices like stocks and houses and crypto are rising fast. But what if those things were more or less level, rising a bit here and there, and all the traditional currencies were actually sinking, giving the impression that all the assets were rising? I thought, well, that's an interesting perspective on what is actually happening. And I don't have a view, and I'm not giving anybody any advice to buy anything at all. But and I don't give financial advice to anybody. But it's interesting to me just to watch what's happening, because it could just be a bubble and a boom, or it could actually be a whole new way of the future.
Yeah, it's a moment in time. And if you think about where we are, is if it's an opportunity now, if we said, it's not going to last, well, then we're living in fear, right? If it's real, and only 1% of the world's involved in crypto, right? It's a small percentage. It's a $1.8 trillion whatever market cap now, whatever it is. But if we think about saying, to your point, anything about it, if it's good, it's bad. I'm not here to say it's good. It's just here. It is what it is right now. Enjoy that. Love that present moment. It's an opportunity in the present moment. And people say to me, this is not going to be around. I said, I don't know what's going to be around tomorrow. I'm not saying it's going to be around. I know it's part of, I think when I want to dream big, and this is something I have to work on, it allows me to put and this is a limiting belief, beyond belief, and something I have to work on. It allows me to put a how to get there, right? I've invested here, I've done this,
Yeah.
I've done that, right?
Yeah.
And that is a
Yeah.
limiting, but it gives me something to stand on and go, I know I'm doing the right stuff. It may come from another avenue, but I know I'm at least trying.
That's right. So I think the secret is somewhere in there from what you said. I think the secret is that we don't know how the universe is going to provide for us financially, but we know that we will always have enough. And in the moment, we always do have enough. And I think the secret is to be open to opportunities.
It's interesting you say that, the opportunity, and that's that we're so quick, and I have this, I joke with my kids, we sit down and we dream, and and I do have big aspirations and big dreams financially. I think that there's so much more fun. I always think I'm so much more fun with financial means at my side, and it's so much more fun for everybody around me when I have those financial means around me. And you can do so much, and you can see the look on people's faces, and you can change people's lives, right, with this approach. And to me, that's like, it's like it and people may say that's shallow, but I like it. I glow inside when I talk like that. I'm like, I know that that there's something here. What it is, I'm open to everything. I try things, I take risks. At some point, that's the kind of fun, that's the kind of joy that I get, when there's a little extra here. And you could take, this weekend I'm taking my daughter's friend, and we said that she had gotten a scholarship. We made it up. We just paying for her friend to come with us and do all this kind of stuff. We told their family they got a scholarship. And I'm like, because we were able to, we were fortunate, we were grateful, we're very, very grateful, very, very blessed. We thank God every day and thank the universe. And we're like, let's just go have fun with that. Like, who else can we make smile? And that to me is amazing.
Yeah, so I have experienced two sides of that coin. I've experienced the fun part of it, where you can have a lot of stuff and do a lot of things and have amazing trips and blah blah blah, and you can do a lot of things for a lot of people. And there's a lot of people I know, especially family members, extended family, who we did amazing stuff with, and they remember it years later, and it's awesome. But I also got to the point where that became my persona, that it was the cars I had, the houses I had, the trips I went on, the class of flights that I took, the restaurants I went to in Paris, and all that kind of stuff. And I became that person. And Joshua says quite rightly that, well, you never feel that good if that's who they like, because that's not you, that's just a persona. And so what I've really tried to do is not be that version that didn't work for me, and to try and actually be a fun person just by being me, right? Not by splashing out on people, because I found that I was living a life exploring who I wasn't really, a false version of myself. And so I do agree that you can have a lot of fun if you got the means, do stuff you would like. One day, randomly, I said to one of my step grandsons when he was quite young, "Oh, we're in town, there's a helicopter place here, let's go and rent a helicopter for an hour and fly over all the islands out in the Hauraki Gulf in Auckland," which is stunning, you know, all these volcanic islands. So we just got up and whizzed around for an hour, and just for the sake of it, on the spur of the moment, you know, which you can't do it if you got the cash to splash. So, and I've never forgotten that, because it was just stunning. It was a beautiful day, blah, blah. So it is a fine line, but I noticed those kids actually like me for who I am and the fun we had, not for any idea of money, which is really cool, all my step grandkids. So yeah, for me, I did fall into that. And I think a lot of people, Gary talks about this a lot too, his previous circle of friends, when he had a lot of money in the business, the valuation, you know, the appraisal business and all the real estate, and how he said, "Oh, well, they liked me for who they thought I was, which wasn't who I really was, and it was never satisfying." And so that's been something I've been unpacking for some time, to try and be the authentic me, not pretend to be anything I'm not, and people can either take it or leave it.
Yeah, there is a sense, right? There's that sense of value that you give yourself, worthiness, right? That when you have it, it's like, I feel worthy, I feel important, I feel significant. And that's a huge issue with me anyway. One of my limiting beliefs is I'm not significant.
Yeah.
No, I feel for that, and Rob, I really do. I gotta jump on another call, but I love these talks.
Yeah.
I really do. Should we just, you want to continue to do it next Thursday as well?
Yeah. I put it in my diary. So
oh, good.
Yeah. So you'll find that my Calendly probably won't have that spot there, because I already put you in. So we'll make this a fixed event. Cool. Yeah.
And I want to finish my other my plots, because I'm enjoying that. I want to get those over to you, and I want to get some thoughts. So I wasn't neglecting you. I was just a little under the weather the last couple of days.
No, I'm the same. I'm halfway through them and I haven't sent them. So, okay, have a great evening, and I will see you soon.
Absolutely, be great.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. That was awesome.